Shabbat Shalom. I'm here to tell you that tribalism is good and alive in 2024. How do we know that tribalism is good and alive in 2024? Because we know that the holy men of the University of Michigan are preparing now to take on and defeat and conquer the evildoers of Ohio State. So I'll say it, yes. Go blue. Now you'll notice I come prepared for the moment. My tie, a Michigan Wolverines tie. My kippah to match. In this way, we are encouraging in this moment of holiness the holy doers of the University of Michigan that they should overtake their enemies. Right? Tribalism is alive and well. Though I'll note, as Amy reminded me, in Judaism, we're forbidden from praying for miracles. And a Michigan victory today is going to be tough. We'll just say it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Nevertheless, we are people of emunah. We're people of faith. And so when we wear our lucky ties, we make sure that things can happen for the good guys, making sure that they overcome the bad guys. Tribalism is alive and well in 2024. We know tribalism is alive and well in 2024 because we just celebrated the holiday of Thanksgiving, where families all over our country came together so that they could fight in the same location rather than long distances away from each other. I was told some families didn't set up two tables this year for adults and children as in past years, but rather there are two tables this year for Democrats and Republicans, so we don't have to sit together. Tribalism is alive and well in 2024. Maybe there are two tables for vaxxers and anti-vaxxers, for pro-choice and for pro-life. God forbid anyone should ever sit together and talk with each other and even address some of our disagreements and differences. And I'll note that tribalism is alive and well in 2024 as many families around our country couldn't even sit together in the living room or at one table to celebrate Thanksgiving. But in stark contrast to that, Israel and Lebanon, to a certain degree Hezbollah, were actually able to achieve a ceasefire this week. And I just want us to pause and think about the significance of that. When Americans who are Democrats and Republicans can't sit together at the same Thanksgiving table, we were able to achieve a ceasefire in Israel. It's a big deal. It's a sacred moment. Shechianu v'kiyamanu v'yigianu lazman hazeh. Blessed are you, God, who allows us to reach this sacred and awesome moment in time. Now, we're not kidding ourselves. A ceasefire is not a peace agreement. We're far from it. But a ceasefire is something. It's something. We'll take it. And even more, it demonstrates that people from two very different tribes can at least come together and find a reason to stop shooting at each other. It's pretty significant. It is a holy moment. And I was thinking about that this week, this idea of the difference between ceasefire and peace agreement. The difference between people who can sit together and people who can't sit together. I was thinking about this idea of tribalism as we come to our Torah portion this week, Parashat Toldot. And I'll invite you, if you want, to turn with me in your Eitz Chaim Chumashim. I'm on page 147. Here, of course, we read about the birth of Jacob and Esau, two brothers who could barely find a way to get along with each other. And it says, of course, that Rebekah had a special fondness for Jacob. Isaac had a special fondness for Esau. And Rebekah knew she was blessed with the gift of prophecy, so she knew that eventually Jacob would be the head and Esau would follow after, that Jacob would be the recipient of the covenant and Esau would not. But here in our Torah portion again, page 147, I'm on Genesis chapter 25, verse 27. The Torah tells us when the boys grew up, Esau became an Ish Yodea Tzayid, a skillful hunter. Ish Sadeh, a man of the outdoors. But Jacob, as the Torah says here, was a mild man who stayed in camp. Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim. And the language is very interesting as we juxtapose the two of them together. Esau was an Ish Sadeh, a man of the field. He was an outdoorsy guy. He was someone from Middle America, shall we say. But Jacob was an Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim. Jacob was someone who was relatively simple and straightforward, someone who liked to sit in the tent. I appreciate that about Jacob. The idea of hanging out in the field is not exactly my cup of tea. I'd much rather sit in the tent and, do my own thing. But here what we come to see is a real juxtaposition of two different kinds of people. We have those who are in Ish Sadeh, men of the field, hunters, outdoorsmen, people who are, like that. And then we have Jacob, who it says it was a Yoshev Ohalim. He sat in tents, which our rabbis would come to say, what was he doing all the time, sitting in tents? He must have been studying in yeshiva. I know that's how you read the text too. Clearly he was sitting and studying his Talmud in yeshiva. But it juxtaposes Jacob was someone who sat inside, as opposed to his brother who was an outdoorsman. Now, I won't ask you, which kind of person are you? Who are your people? Are your people the Ish Sadeh, the men of the field? Or are your people the Yoshev Ohalim, the inside dwellers? I won't even ask you which are your people, the Michigan Wolverines or the Ohio State Buckeyes, though obviously I know the answer. I won't ask you which are your people, the Democrats or the Republicans, the vaxxers or the anti-vaxxers, the pro-choice or the pro-life. Because this is very human. We have our people, and we have those people. Right? We know the old joke about the Jewish guy who's discovered on a deserted island, and when they finally come to rescue him, he's taking them around the island, giving them a tour. And of course, he comes to show them this synagogue, the one at which he prays, and he comes to show them the other synagogue. He built a second synagogue. And his rescuers say, you're one person. You're here by yourself on a deserted island. Why do you need two synagogues? He said, the answer is easy. This is my shul, and that's the shul I'd never step foot in. We are tribal by our very nature. Who are your people? As you look around this community, as you look around this country, maybe even as you look around the world, who are your people? And who are the people that you would never want to be counted among? Now, with incredible gratitude in this season of gratitude, I am grateful to our synagogue leadership, who this year and next year have gifted me several weeks an opportunity to engage in some sabbatical time. And so maybe you noticed I wasn't here for a couple Shabbases. I was immersed in some learning. And what I've chosen to spend my time learning is to see what Judaism tells us about the intersection between compassion and justice. Because in the midst of this last year, since October 7th of 2023, we've come to see real division, and I've certainly felt it and maybe even perpetuated it myself. There are my people, and there are the people I would never want to be counted among. And so I wanted to look at this intersection because I've seen a lot of the way, at least in my own head, in my own heart perhaps more so, how I've divided people. It's between the Tikkun Olam Jews and, the people who actually like Jews. Right? It's the Tikkun Olam Jews and those who are interested in Judaism and who are willing to welcome particularism. And we've created what is a false binary between two different kinds of people. Because as of course we know, and it doesn't take a sabbatical to know this, Judaism commands us to be both compassionate and just. Judaism commands us to be merciful and at the same time uphold the law and pursue accountability for those who break the law. So what I'm trying to learn, what I'm studying, what I'm exploring is how can we be both compassionate and just? How can we be both merciful and hold people to a certain level of accountability when what they do goes against their family, goes against right and wrong? But it's in the name of compassion, which is also a very Jewish idea. And so this is what I'm exploring as we go along, and I welcome your insight as we come to see where is this intersection. Because Judaism doesn't tell us that you should be either compassionate or just. Judaism doesn't say you either are someone who is merciful toward others or you're someone who holds others accountable. Judaism tells us to be both compassionate and just. Judaism tells us to be both merciful and those who hold others accountable. Now, I'll note as we celebrate the ceasefire that was achieved this week, it was essentially two very different tribes who said, let's just take a break from shooting at each other. It was hardly a peace agreement. But I think as we're to move forward as Jewish people, we have to find a way to break down the tribalism that separates us as Jews. I think even more as the Jewish people, if we want to move forward into the coming generations, we have to find a way to be both compassionate and just, to be both merciful and still holding those who break the law accountable for their actions. How do we achieve that? We know that eventually Jacob and Esau came back together. We know that they found a way to hug. And not so much to live together, but at least to recognize that they have to live next to each other. We know that Isaac and Ishmael come back together to bury their parents. And I'll note that when the Torah tells us what kind of people we should be, it says, Zedek, Zedek, Tirdof. Now, how do we translate this idea of tzedek? Often it's justice, justice you shall pursue. But I think it's a poor translation because we're told to pursue both justice and compassion. We're told to pursue both mercy and to hold those who are accountable. So the Torah tells us, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, righteousness, righteousness you shall pursue. Because if we're going to continue together as a Jewish people, if we're going to be those who love each other, if we're going to say, even though we don't agree with each other, we have an obligation toward one another, then we have to find a way to pursue tzedek, righteousness, a balance between compassion and justice, a balance between mercy and accountability. That's what it means to be a Jew. The Torah tells us we're supposed to love our neighbors. The Torah tells us we're supposed to love the stranger. And at the same time, we're obligated to protect ourselves. How do we accomplish both? Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Righteousness, balance, being both compassionate and just is how we seek to achieve both of our aims. I look forward to sharing with you as my learning continues, God willing, in the next couple of years. Please, God, may we count among ourselves. May we be among those who are lovers of compassion, and may we be among those who love justice. May we be among those who love mercy, and may we be those who pursue accountability. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Righteousness, righteousness shall you pursue. Jacob and Esau have to find a way to live together. Ken Yiratzon, may this be God's will, and let us say together, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, and go blue.